What's up, y'all a little faith? Can you believe we are 20 episodes into searching for answers on the Fagnostic podcast? And I got a treat for y'all. My 20th guest is singer-songwriter Derek Webb. Y'all, I've been listening to his music for over 20 years, starting when I was a praise and worship leader at my Christian private school in Alabama. Derek is an incredible songwriter based in Nashville, Tennessee, writing music about the highs and lows of his experience with Christianity. He became a household name in every Christian home across the globe when he was a member of the hugely successful group Caedmon's Call. He left the group in '03 to start his solo career and has since become very vocal about his very public divorce from Christianity. We both are former Calvinists, and I can't tell you how cathartically unpredestined it is to sit down with Derek today and talk about how much American Christianity has harmed us and is harming the world. For me, Derek's voice was a catalyst to sing the divine 20 years ago, and it's a catalyst to sing the divine today. I hope this conversation inspires you the way that it did me to keep searching, keep loving, and as you'll hear in this episode, to keep checking your roots. Welcome, Derek. Derek Webb, thank you for being here. I am going to try not to fanboy my way through this interview because I feel like you have been a part of my journey unbeknownst to you. And I'm so thankful that you found it fitting to hang out with me for an hour and talk to my listeners. It's really, really important to me for people who have struggled with faith to be honest and vocal about it, no matter what side you end up on in the future. That allowance, that permission for struggle was so not taught or appreciated growing up in Christianity. And I feel like it's the most important aspect of Christianity. So thank you for being willing to share all this with me. I'm so glad you're here.
A pleasure. I'm so glad to talk to you.
So first question we start every episode off with is, are you a believer?
And I'm sure that most of your guests, you would prefer to give a yes or no answer to that question.
Oh, no, I like nuance.
Oh, okay. Well, my answer, as it hits me, is I think the weight of the word belief is heavy. And I think that I'm kind of in a or at least a break from feeling comfortable with words like belief, because I think there's such a connotation and a weight, and I don't know if there's anything that I have found at this point in my life that I would put the weight of the word belief on. I think the way that I like to, because it brings conclusion bias with it. It just brings all kind of gremlins, and so I'm really liking the term. Or the idea of hypothesizing. So there are things that I have hypotheses about some things as it's regarding the things that you can't know or see, like the future or God. When you're dealing with things that are invisible and unknowable, I think uncertainty is a pretty good way to go. So I hypothesize about things, but I don't know that I'm believing anything.
I love that. And that speaks to a project that you are working on now too, the Jesus hypothesis, that we can touch on later as well. So the second question we do every episode is just to identify your pronouns.
Yes, he, him.
Awesome. Thank you for doing that. I also identify as he, him. And I in asking my guests to give theirs, I've neglected to give my own, just in my own ignorant assumption that people know, and that's part of the problem is making sure that we create that welcome space for all to feel seen and appreciated. So
love that. Absolutely.
I think my first question, because you kind of were hitting on it with the idea of putting weight on the word belief and the connotations that come with that. And one of the things that kind of started like the Derek Webb scandal were some tweets that were sent out about the word yoke. And talking about the needless need for the yoking. And I'm getting all the words wrong, but I find it really, part of my own deconversion was when I started to see that there were other communities that the more I believed, the more it harmed them. And so it reminds me of like where we may take that the yoke becomes light. In our own yoke becoming light, it actually makes it heavier for others that don't find their divine path through that way. So I guess let's just start. Where did your deconversion start? Because like we saw it as it unraveled in social media and in the media, but it never starts there. It always starts I mean, whether it's in childhood, like where did it start for you? Where did you notice that first thread being pulled out?
Yeah. Oh, it's a great question. I appreciate the way you framed it. So I'm wired to be contrary, and I have always been that way. I've since I was a kid, I've always gotten into trouble asking apparently questions that you're not supposed to be asking about certain. Like there would be a question about some Sunday school or something, and there would be a question about a particular what do you think about this and the way it says that and what does that mean? And I would always want to ask, like, can I deconstruct the question? I don't like the way the question's framed. It's not giving me enough space to I don't understand what we're like. You got to define all the words in that question before I have any idea how in the world I would answer it. And so I think it probably made me seem like I was just trying to give people a hard time, but I've always been wired that way, and so I'm very comfortable with questions, asking questions. And just questioning why we're even framing it in that particular way, and why is that the only way to look at it? And I do that very naturally. And so I think when it came to my spirituality, which I kind of, like most people who grew up in the South, which I did, I kind of just tripped and fell into it. I mean, it's just you're surrounded by it, and most people don't realize really until you have a moment of where if you can get some perspective and a break from it, which could be a deconstruction, deconversion kind of season or whatever, you don't realize how it's infiltrated every part of culture and all language and every clock and calendar. And money. You just don't realize how it's everywhere until it's not your presumed belief or perspective anymore.
Yep.
And so growing up in the South, I grew up going to church, and in churches. I was in a private school at my church through the 6th grade, and then went to public school. And then my whole, I should say the end of my high school experience, I kind of went through a conversion experience when I was a summer between sophomore and junior year, I think, is that right? And then was just kind of, involved in some kind of, in high school it was Young Life and like a high school parachurch ministry, and then after kind of quickly found my way. I've played music is the one consistent for me. So I've played music. I've been interested in and played music since I was single digits, since I was 6-7 years old. And so that's always been part of my life. It's always been a huge guiding light. And so musically, right out of high school, I played in bands my whole life, certainly all through junior high and high school. And right out of high school, also kind of backed and fell my way into a band, starting a band, which wound up being Caedmon's Call. And although we were all kind of individually, or a lot of us, there were like 6 of us in the band, we were all coming from very different places, but did have a certain spiritual curiosity in common, an evangelical spiritual curiosity in common. And we didn't really go to a lot of trouble to make that part of our branded identity for all the years that we were indie, and that was maybe 3 or 4 years. When we signed our first record deal with Warner Brothers, they intuited pretty quick that their job is to look at things and figure out how to sell them. And so I think they intuited about us that they ought to make us a Christian band. And so that's what happened. That's where we were marketed. And unfortunately, that worked. And so we got stuck right there. And then I've been kind of stuck there for a long time. But what's interesting about it is because I'm wired the way that I am to be contrary, and I'm again comfortable asking questions. Through all my songwriting and my years in Caedmon's, I wasn't necessarily asking a ton of questions, but I definitely was. You can go back and see my hardwiring in terms of the way I'm contrary. You can see that, but it definitely in my solo career, which I've been in for about 15 years. I was in Caedmon's for 10. I've played solo music for about 15. Have put a bunch of records out, and that has been the hallmark, I think, of my solo career. I kind of came out guns a-blazing asking questions and trying to upset conventions and looking for things that people seem to not want to or not be willing to talk about, especially as it pertained to my kind of spiritual journey along the way. And so there's a sense in which I've always been doing it. And then there's a sense in which it's like a thing you do slowly over time and you do quickly all at once. I did both because I've always kind of cocked my head and looked at the thing and just kind of didn't, wasn't always super comfortable with the how plainly the definitions seemed to be coming from people who I was asking my questions to. But because a thing like spirituality, especially a mystical first century, not really first century, but arguably it goes obviously a lot further back than that. But any kind of mystical Eastern type religion, it's not going to fit very comfortably. It's not
right.
If we reduce it down to where we can make a systematic theology out of it, or we can answer questions kind of quickly, or categorize it easily, we're not talking about it anymore when we talk about it that way, because it can't be talked about that way. It just can't be. And so, so I was always picking away at it. I was always gnawing on the hand that fed me all the way through my solo career. But then finally, maybe about 6 or 7 years ago, it was probably 2016-ish, 15, 16, is when it kind of happened all at once. And that was tied in large part to some major personal life changes I was going through. I went through a divorce. I was going through some professional kind of shifts of switching around, the label that I was working with and some other things. And it, for me, provided an opportunity to really pull the thing up, to examine the roots. It's kind of the risk you have to run is you have to pull a thing up to see, first of all, if there's any roots down there. Yeah. And if there aren't, you're like, well, I'm glad I found that out because I've made it to look beautiful above ground, but it turns out there was nothing really down there. I'd rather know that sooner than later, so I don't waste my whole life constructing a thing above ground that has no roots. Or like, oh, okay, well, there really is something to this. Let's put it back in the ground. Let's replant. Let's kind of take an audit of the whole thing and let's move forward. And
I love that analogy.
Yeah, that's how it feels to me. That's how it has felt. And I think it's a thing you need to do regularly. It's like, That's why I think about like the pulling up and the replanting. I also like the kind of the audit, because an audit is a thing you do regularly. It's not a thing you do once. You need to audit your language, audit your presumptions. You need to audit, if you are believing anything, audit your beliefs, audit all of it regularly, so that maybe rather than having to go through these exhaustive and exhausting deconstruction processes, maybe instead, my whole thing is what would be so much better is to just stop constructing. Why are we constructing just to deconstruct? That's how I found my way into kind of the hypotheses language, is because I would rather hypothesize in real time and then continue to move forward, holding whatever hypothesis makes the most sense, always letting it argue with my life experience and new information, and continue to move on hypothesizing rather than like believing a thing. Because when you believe, you put a flag down and then you move away from it and then you kind of refer back to it. But it's like you're not really bringing it with you. So anyways, like that's some of how I kind of got here, in terms of, I think I've always been doing it, and then I've done it a lot, and it was kind of a hockey stick, graph about in 2015, 2016. And now I feel like that's a permanent fixture, that I'm not really, as I said at the very top, I'm not really interested in believing stuff so much as I'm very interested in hypothesizing in real time about everything and trying to bring all my questions and doubts and curiosities with me in real time all the time going forward. Let that be the presumption of how we do it.
Derek, you are such a fucking artist. To hear you talk about how you have, gone through these things, just to see the imagery in your head. And that's what, I was kind of laughing at myself I was driving back from Joshua Tree today and just listening to everything that I could in the car, from your early days with Cavens to your current days with your new albums and everything. And I was just like, Derek's a guy that you don't have to look online to learn about them. You just have to listen to their music. Because it was just like, I saw your struggle. I saw little Easter eggs back in the day of questioning. And then you see it like, I mean, in your current and within the past 5 years albums, like, I mean, I mean, you went from, basically saying that you can do nothing good without God to then saying like, I'm surrounded by people who are chasing empty mangers. And I was like,
Yeah.
what a journey, but it's so
Hmm.
important for you to be speaking out about it, because most people live with this dialogue in their head, but don't know how to articulate or form
Yeah.
it to
Yeah.
make sense to them. So they just put it away, put it under the rug, maybe bury it with more Jesus, more church, or
Yeah.
perhaps a vice that, would be looked at as sinful by the church.
Right.
And
It's really true.
yeah, but I'm so, so thankful that you're being open and honest about this. You've gotten a
Oh,
lot of criticism because and I think it's just, people who have such strong, how they view as strong faith, I think is actually pretty weak faith, because it's untested, it's untried
right.
by the fire.
Yeah.
But people have really accused you of like capitalizing or exploiting your
Mm.
trauma for gain. And I'm like, do y'all not know that nobody wants to go through spiritual trauma? It's one thing for another person to say you don't deserve God's love, but it's another thing to come from a belief system where you believe yourself that you're not worthy of God's love.
Right.
And why would you put yourself through that? It's just,
Yeah.
I get
Yeah.
so mad when I see those articles.
Yeah. And it's just kind of it's, I mean, it's not my first rodeo. I mean, I've
Of
done this
course.
job for a very long time, for 20 years. And, I've been in this job, and I get it. When you emote and express yourself publicly, then you have to accept that there will be a public response that is going to have to just be part of it. And that's going to have to just be fair game. And that's okay. And you also, if you choose, can liberate yourself from caring about that,
Yes.
and realizing that is not a safe place to receive information about yourself, because none of those people really know you or anything about you. They're just talking about or reacting to what you've said, which is not all of who you are. And so it's not a great, I think too many people have too many sources of information about themselves, many of which are unsafe, and that's how they wind up getting tied all in knots, about their own identities or whatever. But I like what you said about language, and I do think that's really helpful. And I just know that I have really benefited from friends and writers and musicians, who have done that exact thing, who provided language for me to be able to understand myself better and talk about myself, and to be understood better, so I understand myself, and I can be understood by other people better when I have language. And we need language. We need fresh and updated language all the time. It's almost like the old and the new wineskins. It's like we need to find, and especially as we're changing and growing and progressing and coming into new information and evolving, and you can't continue to use the same words to describe the experience you're having when you're in the 5th, 10th, 20th year of that experience. You're going to have to come up with more than just new adjectives. You need new verbs and nouns. We need new language. And so I have definitely taken that part of my job really seriously, especially in the last 5 or 6 years, starting with a record like Fingers Crossed, which was my first kind of documentation of deconstruction. That I've called my tale of two divorces. I kind of did my horizontal and my vertical all at once on that record and talked about all of it. And then the record that followed was called Targets, which is also that was kind of my defiantly joyous record of like not just pulling things apart, but putting some things back together and bringing some things with me. Talking about all the things that God does not get in the divorce that you get to bring with you. And so especially on those records, I have just accepted a real responsibility of trying to help find and write and provide language, soundtrack for people who are going through complex and nuanced things and can't find music to go with them. And soundtrack is so important. It's so important for seasons of life. And so I take that part of my job really seriously. And I didn't used to. Back in Caedmon's, I think songwriting was a more selfish endeavor for me back then, because I was just really only looking a few inches past my nose. But I've always seen my job, and if you're a creative type who might be listening, feel free to take this language and use it as well. But the way I've always liked to think about the job of the artist is to look at the world and describe it. Look at the world, tell us what you see, that's the job.
Yep.
And incumbent in that job description is that your perspective and the world that you're observing all will change over time, and it's therefore not only okay but expected that the way you describe the world and the world you're describing will change over time.
Absolutely.
And so if you're doing your job well and honestly and vulnerably, then over time there should be a 100% chance that you will wind up writing songs, making things, making art that you for sure disagree with.
Yeah.
Eventually.
Yeah.
Because nobody who can be trusted, who is healthy and coming into new information, still agrees with and believes 100% of what they did 5, 10, 20 years ago. And so, and it's a thing you have to be okay with as you move forward and not feel like, oh, I can only write something if I know I'm going to think this forever. Once you can get free of that preoccupation, you can start to be more immediately honest and vulnerable with where you are, what you're feeling, and just know that like, oh, I'm for sure going to not believe any of this or agree with any of this, probably sooner than I think. And rather than get paralyzed and stuck in my moment or write things that are in no way vulnerable or true about myself, because for the fear of that very disagreement with myself, instead, what you do is you just write more. You just write more all the time. And the only way to get a sense of who somebody is as an artist is to step back and squint your eyes at all of it.
Yes.
And like all of it's part of who I am, where I've come from, what I once believed, and where I've been, and every bit of that's part of what makes me me. So I don't resent any of it. I may feel like I'm covering another man's material to play my early songs because I'm not, in fact, the man who wrote those songs. But I trust him that when he looked at the world and described it for us, he did the best job that he could with the company he had. So I'll cover his material. But but that's always what you're doing, and that's what every artist is doing if they are in a discipline of art that has to execute the art in real time in front of people live the way that music does. And so once you can get kind of, and it just took me some years to find my way to some of these things. And once you do, it really does liberate you to say, you know what, I'm going to say exactly who and where I am right now. And then I'm going to do that again next year, and it'll be very different from this. And then people are just going to have to go with me.
Yeah.
If they want to, if they resonate with this, it's just going to have to be a thing they come with me on.
And that freedom you describe is also part of what you talked about being what ultimately pulled you out of Christianity, is that you actually found greater freedom by leaving it. And that's one of the things I've had conversations with my parents about, is that, we used to, and that song, Thankful is case in point with this, but like we were taught that you can do no good without God. Yeah. And then the longer that I live in this world, and I live in a melting pot of everything in the middle of Hollywood, California. But I found the more I traveled, the more that I loved people that were not from my upbringing, the less chance they had to win by me sticking to this infallible truth, quote unquote, and that's where my strings started being pulled out. But how many people were you able to, because the Christian music industry is not at face value. It is so. I have been to Christian music sing-ins that turned into gay orgies. I have, been to Christian music concerts where I see people that I may have hooked up with, and you know what I mean? Like, absolutely, it is. So how many people, I guess, came to your defense versus how many people just shunned you for the sake of their own label needs and fan base?
Sure. Well, who's to say? At the end of the day, it's like the folks who are gonna bristle and criticize, and mostly out of fear, their own probably personal fear about what they believe, and it's never surprising from most of the sources it comes from. It's usually not a huge shocker, and I think like with any creative type, or this is not even a problem for artists. This is a problem for everybody. That when you could have 98.5% of everybody say kind and encouraging things to you, and then you could have just like 1 or 2 people say the opposite, and you can't. It's so hard to not obsess on that tiny bit of negativity. But I think what I eventually learned was I just don't have the time or the bandwidth in my life for that type of negative energy. So it's not that I don't care. I do care. about folks and what they and their opinions. I mean, I don't. I will say that while I have other problems, the problem I don't have is people pleasing. I don't have that muscle that cares what people think. I really don't. And I try to use it as I try to use that power for good. I mean, I try to over the years. That's why I have kind of gone after some of the subject matter that I have that I know will put me in the crosshairs, because I have artist friends who I think would do that if they could, but it would crush them to do it because they wouldn't be able to bear the criticism that they would receive from doing it. I don't. If anything, I'm fearful a lot of the time that I'm not really doing my job, and I can't really even enjoy it if I don't receive. It's like validation when I receive that kind of criticism, like, oh, I'm doing the right thing because this is what I'm here to do. Like, I'm here to shake this up, and so I look for it as confirmation that I have gone far enough. And if I make something that's universally loved and accepted, I'm like, man, shit. I think I watered it down. Like maybe I didn't go like where I should have gone. And so I try to focus, is the point, on the people, and even really the smaller group of people who seem to most deeply resonate with the things that the questions that I write, the questions that I ask, and the songs that I write. I try to focus my energy on those folks. And because that's really what matters. If anything, the music is just the tip of the spear that you would hope, you find people and you all connect with each other. And there's a reason why there are people who have been with me for a super long time. It's because we have resonance in our stories that maybe we're not aware of. And so we just deeply connect. We do. And so that's really what I'm like looking for. I mean, or that's what I pay attention to. I'm looking for the negativity because I want to make sure I've done my job to the extent that I need to be doing it. So if I don't, that's a red flag. If no one's complaining, if no one's mad at me, then maybe I need to go back and reassess. But yeah. So, and I always appreciate that. The hard part about the internet, and this isn't exactly the question you're asking, but is that I always so appreciate folks who are willing to who see other people just willingly misinterpreting or misunderstanding something that really is not that hard to understand. And just because they want to try to get your attention, or they want to try to, that's really mostly what it is. They want to get your attention. They want your attention. And they're starved apparently for attention. They want yours really bad. So they're going to say something that they think will spark a reaction out of you, that you will come and engage with them. And no matter what you say either way, they're happy because they got what they wanted, which was your attention. And when I ignore some of these people or just let them say their thing, and I don't, comment one with the other, I have these dear, sweet people who will come and kind of jump in there and try to defend or explain or whatever. Sure. Sometimes with a tremendous amount of patience, sometimes not. And I just kind of, for those folks, I will occasionally kind of directly message people and say, like, I saw what you said. I really deeply appreciated it, and just feel at liberty to just let it go, because what I don't want is for that to become a preoccupation for those people, maybe who, because it's a thing you learned. It's like your skin gets thick and you learn, what's important to focus on, what's important to let go, what's important to, and but for people who are dear, sweet friends who will jump on and just try, and I hate seeing it because I just think it's so, that kind of energy is so destructive. And I definitely believe deeply in the exchange of energy in general, call that karma, call it cause and effect, call it law of attraction, call it whatever you want. But I think that the energy that you dwell on and sow is going to be what comes back. And if you spend your time focused on the negativity and being consumed with it and radiating out that negativity, that negative energy, then don't expect that you're going to see a lot more than that, in terms of what comes back. And whereas I think if we can focus on resonance and kindness and finding people who we can find some reciprocal generosity with, and we can find, and you can radiate that type of energy, then that for sure is what you're going to see come back in the fruit from the ground of the way you're spending your time. And I take that sort of thing really seriously. And I really try to protect my own energy and like where I'm putting it and what am I
Of
dwelling
course.
on? Was I up for 2 hours looking at negative Facebook comments, or was I up, for 2 hours having some amazing deep conversation with my wife? Like, I mean, I'm looking to invest positive energy in the right places because I have seen and I know for a fact that cause and effect might be the one belief that I do have because I've observed it, and I think it's just that's part of how reality functions. So I definitely take that seriously, and it keeps me away from a lot of that negativity, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear you say that, because what I'm going to say next will be null and void on you. But one of the questions I was going to ask you, because as a gay guy growing up in the church, and when I started pulling away, deconstructing, whatever,
Yeah.
I had resentment towards anybody that I had quote unquote followed growing up. And I went to a small Christian school as well, and I was the leader of the praise band,
Yep.
and we have case, of course, sang your songs. And actually,
Yeah.
I think, I mean, I referenced it for the second time today, but I think Thankful is where I taught myself how to do that yodel, the kind of like the OG Derek Webb yodel back in the day. You know what I'm talking about? Just
Sure.
the little flick of the yeah.
That's great,
But
dude.
but it was, so today in the car, I was just thinking, like, how do I phrase that question? And as soon as I had this thought, the song Redeeming Guitar came on. And I
Oh,
know that
wow.
it wasn't necessarily what it was about, but to me, it was just saying, like,
Huh.
he's doing the work to repair whatever message he sent out earlier,
Yeah.
because he's still picking up the guitar. He's still telling his story. So I want to thank you. I cannot thank you enough
Oh,
for not letting your own spiritual warfare inside keep you from being vocal about it. I can't
yeah.
imagine how many lives you are now saving
Oh,
because of what of how vocal you are with this honesty.
well, that's
Um,
very super kind of you to say. And honestly, it is one of the reasons why. I mean, you mentioned before, and it's come up a few times on social media, and I've only really addressed it a few times because I don't think it really needs a lot of addressing. It's such a minority of voices that I've heard it from, but I did think it was worth addressing the whole thing of like, aren't you just cashing in on and monopolizing, on your spiritual disbelief or whatever it is, however people frame it, and that's where I'm like, well, a few things. One is, again, all I can do is look at the world and describe it for you. That's how I make art. That's how it's done, in my opinion. And sometimes the me that looks at the world and the world that I see looks like a song like Thankful. Sometimes it looks like a song like Wedding Dress, but other times it looks like songs that are on some of the newer records, and it looks like the Fingers Crossed songs, and it looks like the songs I'm writing now for the new record, and it's like, so I don't manipulate that, nor could I possibly, because all I'm doing is just looking at the world and I'm telling you what I see, and but also, like, it's my job, it's what I do.
yeah.
I'm a professional artist, and I can't really help my source material. Sometimes I write love songs, and sometimes I write songs about wondering where in the world God went and things like that. And so it's not as though I could have planned it that way. But ultimately, to your point that you just made, and those kind of words that I appreciate, like it, I have been so vocal over so many years about where I was spiritually on one side, and I think it would just be. It just feels like reckoning is too hard a word, but it just feels like a balance for me to now be as upfront about how it all looks to me from here. And I think that I have to bring that balance. And it's interesting that those same people wouldn't criticize if I was making records about my strong evangelical faith. That
Right.
wouldn't be me monetizing my spiritual journey.
Well, I was going to say, these things are coming from people who like attend tax-free churches in beautiful, like, maintained courtyard, environments, and
Yeah.
like probably live in Brentwood, Tennessee, and like,
Yeah.
fuck
And
off, come on.
but yeah, but to that point, like, and probably love and support artists who are monetizing their spirituality, except in a way that they approve of. And so if I'm monetizing my spirituality, but it's disbelief and deconversion, then that's where they've got the issue. And the thing is, I'm not I'm monetize, like, it's just so interesting to me that it's like, well, but let's even what's your Bible say? Like, a worker's worth his wages, and this is what I do. It's how I support my family, and I ultimately am just not trying to be a professional anything other than a decent songwriter and performer. And if you like it, then I hope you'll listen to it and support it. And if you don't, then there's just so much other music out there for you. And I don't have any problem with somebody not being a fan of mine. I want you to be happy. Go find music that you like. I mean,
Sure.
and if you like mine, even just for a few years, fantastic. Come hang with me, and then it's okay with me. Like, I don't have any problem. Like, you need to be okay with not liking me anymore.
Yeah.
You need to be okay with it. And you don't have to announce it to me when it's over. You don't have to come on social media and let me know that you're leaving, although people absolutely love to announce their departures. And that's okay, you know. But yeah, it's just interesting. It's interesting. This whole thing is interesting, you know, doing this kind of work this way.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating how often people there's this idea that I said to myself, and it's been a helpful bit of language for me, and it's a hypothesis that I test. But a few years ago, really probably after I put out the Fingers Crossed record, and most of it, and it was so interesting to me that the feedback that I was getting about it, which was a record about deconversion and disbelief and divorce and a lot of hard stuff, and it was so fascinating to me, the responses that I was getting, and I felt like, wow. Do these people realize that the hypothesis I came up with was that maybe there's no such thing as objective criticism. There is only unintentional confession. And because what I found is that it was remarkable to me that maybe everything is a Rorschach. Everything. There's no fixed meaning in anything. I might make a thing and say, here's what it means, but when you see it, whatever you're looking at, your response to it is telling me precisely how you see the world. And so you are unintentionally confessing so much to me with where your outrage is, where your praise is, and people don't realize they're doing it. And I was like, man, I've got this one. It's like I'm on the other side of a two-way mirror, and I'm like this one-man audience to everyone's confession about everything that specifically, surgically bothers them, and where their idols are, and where they're. I mean, it's like you can't believe, and I'm sure you've experienced this too. Whenever people are kind of come at you with criticism, it's fascinating the particular things they choose to criticize and the way that they do it, and how much it tells you about so much more about them than it tells you about you or anything you've made. So that has been a fascinating process over the years, is the perspective that I feel like I wind up getting into the lives of these people who, almost all of whom I don't know, and they don't realize people do not realize what they are unintentionally confessing in their outrage, and the specific way that they word it and way that they do it. It's crazy. But it also kind of lets you get free of a preoccupation with, well, what do people think about what I made? No one's telling me what they think about what I made. They're telling me how they feel about themselves in their own lives. That their response is always about them. And I think, and I'm not even, that's not even a criticism. I'm saying, I think that's appropriate. When I hear, a new song by an artist that I really like, and if I don't like it and I criticize it, listen carefully to the language that I use, and you will hear everything about the way I see the world. And it will have probably nothing to do with that song and that artist. And so I'm saying I do it too. Everybody does it. I think maybe this is just a fact of reality. It's certainly something I'm testing, and so far it proves pretty true. So
yeah. Well, and as you've stated, you're very open to proving yourself wrong or right in the future.
Absolutely, that's right. You have to be, yeah.
And you've already really hit on this, but that idea of the two divorces back when Fingers Crossed was released.
Yeah.
And as someone, I am adamantly and actively trying to date and find people to date. And in my own deconstruction, I'm really, as a gay man, I have found it difficult to look for people that have differing belief systems.
Yeah.
So what was it like in going through a relationship breakdown as well as a religious breakdown, and how it guided you to remarrying in the midst of spiritual chaos in your head? I'm just fascinated by that chapter of your life.
Yeah. Oh, I appreciate you asking, because I don't want to say, if I'm going to say the word divorce a bunch, I want to say the word marriage a bunch too. And that's not that that's for everybody, but for me, I always want to make sure that I most intensely punctuate the positive part of it, and that is that for a little more than 2 years I've been remarried, and it is like I think the thing that I brought with me out of that rough season of all the divorcing that I was doing in every direction, I think was the idea of not making, as it pertains specifically to relationships, which is what you're asking, to always be careful not to make permanent decisions based on impermanent circumstances. And so
say that again for the people in the back.
Yeah. So to be careful to not make permanent decisions based on impermanent circumstances. And what I realized was, after 30 years of evangelical Christian belief, and then maybe 4 or 5 years of, total deconstruction and disbelief and reconstruction of something, what I realized, and my wife has a similar story. She went through seasons of believing and not believing, and believing a new thing and disbelieving that thing. And, it's, what I'm saying is that our opinions as people about the invisible, unknowable parts of reality, invisible like God, unknowable like the future. I'm not trying to be provocative. I'm just saying, in fact, God is invisible. In fact, the future is unknowable. So when it comes to our opinions about those things, we have to be okay with the idea that, and expect that those opinions will in fact change over time, even if it might be micro and not macro, but they will change. They'll evolve. They'll get more nuanced. And so, what my wife and I decided, and luckily we had decided before we met and we brought into our relationship and eventual marriage, was that we just knew that we wanted to be together. What we knew is that we wanted to go through those processes together, because we process things really well together. And I wanted her with me during all my who knows what all kinds of ups and downs and random rabbit holes I'll go down in my opinions about spirituality. I just knew I wanted her with me because I'm just better. She makes me better. She makes me think better, more clearly, more thoroughly, and I do that for her. And so we were both like, listen, like we could, she's, for 6 years has been in a pretty big Christian worship band. And so it's like, and that was certainly where she was when we met, although she as a human individual woman is obviously much more nuanced than the lyrics of any 3.5 minute worship song. And so when we met, we knew we weren't exactly in the same spots. We knew that there were some things that we held, both of us, with a lot of uncertainty, which means our hands were very open with those things, and we knew that we would never really know for sure, so that made it easier, so that there was not a lot of certainty coming in, because that's where things get tough, and people start putting their flags down and defending their castles, and that's when you start to fight and divide over some of that stuff. There was nothing I was putting the weight of the word belief on that I was willing to divide over. But certainly things I'm preoccupied with and that I care a lot about, I'd like to talk about. And we just say, you know what? Like this year, I might be the agnostic and you might be the evangelical, but by this time next year, we could have switched places.
Yeah.
And because you just never know. You never know. And so we just knew we wanted to be together and go through it together. That's it. And so that, I think, was the big thing that, and we can go through anything now. I mean, when that's your presumption versus, this is a three-way marriage between me and you and Jesus, and if one of us leaves, then, the rest of us are screwed. Like, that's not, I think, when I was younger, and maybe when she was younger and she'd been married before and so had I think that, you start to deconstruct and you start to question, and it literally starts to shake all the foundations of everything that it's infused into, which I think is kind of a terrible way to view the world. I mean, it doesn't leave you the real estate to stand anywhere and safely doubt. And I think you must have that because it's just inevitable. It's just inevitable that it's going to happen. And so either you have to forcibly stunt your growth, either in your personal spirituality and your relationship with your partner, or you run the risk of losing the whole thing around any corner. And so I think that's a thing that we brought into our relationship and eventual marriage that I think has really made a lot of difference.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Wow. That gives me a lot of hope.
Yeah, good.
Growing up Southern Baptist and just being, primarily listening to only Christian music,
Yep.
whether hymns or Christian pop and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I've followed over the years, anytime a Christian musician who I have admired or, previously been a fan of has been shunned by their community, you being one of those. And the way that I actually kind of started tracking you again was seeing you and Josh Harris on social media
Yeah.
kind of go to bat for each other, because he also has gone through a similar experience. And but I look at like people. I mean, Jennifer Knapp was shunned.
One of my dearest pals.
And I still like her story. I just adore her, and her, what a fierce musician.
Yes.
And then I don't know what's the guy's name from Avalon, who was basically asked to leave for being gay. And just is there like a secret like club of former Christian songwriters, musicians who are like, y'all, like we're the outcasts now, like, do y'all have like a I don't know, like a dark Twitter or like something where you like catch up on?
That's such a great question. I would like to think there is. Here's what's interesting is I think that what happens is, well, let me back up in non sequitur with one thing that will make sense when I'm done, is that I am a firm, oh my God, I was about to say firm believer.
I almost heard it.
And actually this might be a thing I would test a word like belief on, because it has been so consistently true for me in my life. And that is that you learn everything from failure. Failure is the most important thing you're doing all the time. And so many people contort their bodies emotionally and physically and relationally to avoid professionally, to avoid failure, when really that's the best stuff. That's where you learn everything. Every good thing comes from failure. Success, you expect it. You heap more expectation of it on yourself when you get it. You don't learn hardly anything from success, hardly ever. And if you do learn things, they're usually bad things. They're things that it's bad self-identity and bad either that you're better than you really are or that you're worse than you really are. But either way, success is problematic. Failure, you have the opportunity to learn so much. And I have learned so much from the failures that I have experienced, that I architected, God knows. And as a result, so much of the health and stability and that I have in my life at this point is directly linked to major failure. And I think for that reason, one of the things that can happen if you have a healthy response to your failure, if you welcome it, you learn from it, you iterate and you try again, and you fail and you iterate and you try again, and you fail and you iterate and you find and you learn something. I think that process, when it's done, if it's healthy, people can get bitter and they can get closed down and they can detach, and I think that can be one thing that can happen. But the beautiful alternative thing that can happen is you can get deeply grateful. You can learn a whole new language of gratefulness, which I absolutely have. I could not be more intensely grateful for the things that I have in my life. I could not be. And I think about it every minute of every day. I tell my wife, I tell my fans, my patrons, the people who resonate with and come with me on my professional thing that I'm doing, my kids, my friends. I mean, I am a loudmouth about gratitude, and it's a thing I learned from failure. And I think, and the reason I'm saying all this is because I think what happens is whenever people go through stuff publicly, and so that's kind of tied to jobs that are kind of more public. So I have a kind of a public job, and my wife does. And you mentioned Josh Harris, who's been a pal of mine for a bunch of years. He has a public job. Jen Knapp, another great pal of mine, she has a very public job. So when people go through things publicly, and initially maybe the first thing that happens is the failure. Maybe that's what you see first. You're like, oh man, you hear that thing or you see that thing or whatever it is, and it's just there's just ripples that go out, and there's just this blast radius around a thing that happens. And then maybe you start to see some gratitude and some things that some people are learning, and you're starting to kind of see that coming out. And I think what happens is, I know that what happened with me was I was reached out to by some people, some of whom I knew, some of whom I actually didn't, when I was going through some of my big seasons of failure. Some people reached out Mostly what happens is everybody scatters, and everybody scatters. And especially when when it and you are, it's all a public thing, then people absolutely scatter. And but a few of the people who had been there previously lean in closer, come and really show up. That's special. That's the minority of people. And then some people you've never met before reach out. And I was reached out to by a handful of people. It meant so much to me at the time. Many of those people are my dear friends now. And the reason that they reached out is because they had gone through similar things and they knew what that felt like, and they wanted to come and provide some comfort, some encouragement, some soft landing place somewhere, someone who could understand it, and offer themselves as a resource, as a soundboard, as a confessional, as anything. And it meant so much to me at the time, and especially when you're starved for it, because no one's giving it to you. No one wants to be a safe place for you because everyone wants to see you punished, and so for your failure. And so I think that's probably how everyone learns it. And I think if there is an assembly of the type of people you're talking about, and there kind of is, I think it's a result of this kind of reciprocal, forward-paying, kind of like, I know that when, Josh, and I think Josh handled his thing so well. I think he did such a good job of, kind of navigating really hard things in public. But, he and I hadn't talked in a minute at that time, and I immediately reached out to him. I immediately sent him a direct message or something on Instagram, and then we reconnected, and we started. And then he was through Nashville, and he came over, and he hung out with my wife and I over here for many, many hours, and we talked.
That must have been so cathartic for the three of you to just.
It was. Shoot
the Christian shit.
Yeah, that's right. And Jen Knapp and I have been through this. I mean, and I could tell you stories and stories, but a lot of friends, and so sometimes, so nowadays, for me, and I know for a lot of these people as well, when you see something happen, you see someone, and you're like, oh man, I know exactly what they are feeling right now. I know exactly what that kind of loneliness feels like, and that kind of total shunning. And oh man, like I know it. And you want to help. You want to be part of the machinery that helps to play some small part in helping people choose health and gratefulness and not bitterness and detachment. And so I have, and I do very regularly when I see that sort of thing, reach out to total strangers who I will see going through hard things online, especially, and say, hey, whether you know me or not. Whether it's been a long time since we've talked or not, I want you to know that I absolutely understand and I know what you're feeling, what the world looks like right now for you. And I know you probably feel like every good thing that you're ever going to do is behind you right now. And there are no good surprises left in your future. And I am here to tell you that whether you respond to this or not, that is absolutely not true, because I felt that exact thing. I felt that's what I deserved. That has not been what I've gotten. And it's been the result of learning from my failures and leading with my gratitude. And I am the happiest I've ever been. And the best things that have ever happened to me my whole life are happening to me on this side of such great failure. And if that's true for me, it can and will be true for you. If you need a shoulder to cry on, a guy to drink with, I mean, anything, just offering myself and doing that in a private way. And I do it a lot whenever I see it. And it was done for me. And I know a lot of these other people we're talking about do the same thing. And what happens is over time, you do wind up with this ragtag kind of motley crew of people who are complicated. And there's my favorite kind of people who are complicated, because complicated people know stuff. They know things.
It makes you wonder if that was what the 12 disciples was all about, is that ragtag group of people. I mean, and that's what sucks about, you talk about God doesn't get everything in the divorce. And there's things about my upbringing that I miss, I love, and I still find comfort in. And yet I associate them only with these bigots, with these homophobes, with these racists, with these, yes. And now like the politics and religion is so intertwined anyway, but yes. I'm so thankful you speak to that, because there are things that we can take that can still fuel us and provide those I don't know, those spiritual butterflies, I guess, that you're talking about.
And you can bring those things with you, and you can repurpose them. And that's so much of like, That's the great season that comes after, the long dark night, is like you get to decide what's yours and what makes you you. And I remember like thinking, like weirdly, I still have a weird compulsion to love people who hate me. That whole love of enemy thing is that's such a feature of Jesus following and evangelical Christianity, loving of enemies, and there's so much of that. It's so good. But I was like, and for a minute there, while I was kind of building my parachute in free fall for a while, I was like, weirdly, that's still an instinct for me, and I have no moral objective reason to do it, but I still think that's healthy and best, and I'm gonna continue doing that till I can come up with a reason. But I'm just gonna say that's my thing now, and I still really deeply care about the poor and wanting to be part of solutions for people who are less fortunate, and anchor that and weave it all into the work that I do and things like that. So it's like, I think that's important to do that. I think you have to do that, So I'm glad to hear that you have identified and done that, and are in some process of doing it. I think you must,
Yeah. And just to kind of wrap things up here, I want to know, usually I ask if the divine were standing before you, what would you say to them? But with you, I want to ask, who is Jesus to you now? Because to me, Jesus has become a stumbling block I view people who are Christ followers as those who deny climate change, those who deny the COVID vaccination, those who support Trump, those who think that I can't get married as a gay man. Like, who has Jesus become to you in your deconstructing the building the parachute mid-fall and then reconstruction?
No, it's a great question. I appreciate it. And actually, I'm not afraid to answer both. I mean, if whatever the divine, and if there's like a moment beyond this life, and I'd be okay if there's not. If when the lights go out, the lights are out. I won't know about it. So what difference does it make? Because if the lights are out, then I'm done, and it'll just be quiet and peaceful and fantastic, and I'll have enjoyed every bit of this. But if there is, it would be pure gratitude. I mean, I can definitely say that. I mean, it's not that I wouldn't have questions, but that's my whole energy now, man. It would just be pure gratitude. But so the Jesus thing, it is complicated, and I think I realized at some point. So when I went through my initial stage, let's say, of deconstruction, I'm using my air quotes, because I've learned that when you use a word that 10 different people would give 10 totally different definitions to, you should stop using that word because it doesn't mean anything. Right. And so the word deconstruction, it tends to be tricky. So I try to find other ways to talk about or think about that audit of all the presumptions that you have about spirituality, and that's more kind of the way maybe it feels. But the point is, what I determined was initially, and I think this is true for probably everybody, initially it was really a pretty broadsword, like a hatchet, that I was doing my deconstructing with. I was just chopping shit off, just really going at it. And I think what I realized was, and I'm glad it's coming back around, just so I have mentioned it for anybody who's interested. The thing that I'm doing now in this new record that I'm working on, which is called the Jesus Hypothesis. The thing that I'm doing is I'm not. The problem isn't that I deconstructed, it's that I didn't deconstruct enough, far enough, deeply or specifically enough. And so where I once had a hatchet, I'm now going in with a scalpel, because what I've realized is that when I would talk about, and in this question it's coming up, when people would ask about, or I would think about, or inevitably you wind up in conversations with friends about spirituality, specifically Jesus or Christianity, what I realized is that when I would talk about it, I would, even though weirdly I was, generally I hate categories. Because what most categories like atheist and agnostic and even Christian and everything, they are mostly an effort to give a short answer to a question that has no short answer. And so I hate it. And it presumes way too much. It's over reduction. It's a reduction of the truth. So I don't like it. But in a season where I would have probably resonated mostly with kind of agnosticism, just like I'm not sure I can even know. Maybe out there, maybe, but I'm not sure I can know. When conversations about Christianity or Jesus would come up, fascinatingly, when I would shift back into that Christian mode or whatever, I would talk about Jesus and the whole thing exactly the way I had when I last thought about it. Like I had not progressed an inch from there. So it was exactly all the baggage and all the definitions and it's like I hadn't thought a second about it since then. And my friends, so I went through, I'm not telling tales out of school to say that I went through, especially during my Caedmon's years, I went through a very heavy season of studying what some people think of as Reformed theology. It's a kind of Calvinistic Reformed.
Oh, you're talking to a former Calvinist.
Yeah,
I used to love
yeah,
feeling predestined.
Yeah, exactly. So the Presbyterian kind of Reformed thing, that was my thing. That's what I studied. That was my understanding of it. That was the grid through which I looked at it that made it make the most sense to me. And I'm not even saying it's not the most logical version. I'm just saying that maybe the most logical version isn't the right version, because what would be logical about a mystical first century Middle Eastern religion? But either way, there's a lot of categories, and even that phrase that I hate, but I'm going to move on. That when I would go back, so my friends would make fun of me, and they would say, "Dude, it's so funny because I know you say you don't have a dog in the fight anymore, but you are the most reformed agnostic we've ever met in our lives, because every time you talk about Christianity, it's like you just shift right back there, and it's like airtight for you." And I was like, well, that feels like something I need to address at some point, because I don't want to just lean back on my previous understanding of a thing like that. It's too important. The stakes are too high.
Sure.
So I thought, I need to rethink it. I deconstructed the whole big idea. Now it's time for me to deconstruct the particular way that I saw it and the default that I go back to when I think about it and talk about it. That's what I'm up to on the Jesus hypothesis. And I'm gonna make a recommendation, and then I'm gonna answer your question. I swear to God, I'm getting there. There is a book called Jesus for the Non-Religious. It's by a guy named John Shelby Spong, S-P-O-N-G. He just died just a few weeks ago.
Oh God.
In his 90s, and I believe he was an Episcopal bishop. And yet since the 70s, has been fighting for LGBTQ, not only affirmation, but ordination. Mm-hmm. He's been fighting for women's voices, minority voices, marginalized voices. He has been in this fight for longer than a lot of people have been alive. And he is an incredible thinker and theologian. And when I read the book Jesus for the Non-Religious, it was recommended to me by a great pastor friend, Josh Scott, who's the pastor of Grace Point Church, where strangely and ironically I work part-time. I have a gig at a church now as a mostly non-believing person. That should tell you a lot about Grace Point. But Josh Scott, who's the pastor, who's a great pal of mine, gave it to me. He's a big fan of Spong's. He gave me this book. And at the end of it, I thought, oh my God, if everything that he's saying here, if John Shelby Spong can own and call himself a Christian, maybe I can. Because he's giving me a whole new way to look at and consider the whole tradition and Jesus himself. And thanks to him, the way I will answer your question is, the way I see Jesus now is he's obviously, I think he's arguably a man of history. I don't think it's hard to debate that.
Right.
I would never say that I don't think he was a person who existed in the first century in the Middle East. He absolutely was. There are a lot of things surrounding what I see as a Messiah narrative that has been impressed on him by people decades and hundreds of years after his life. But I see him as deeply disruptive to culture in all the ways that are the most important ways to disrupt conventions that are expired and need to be changed and disrupted, and progress needs to come forward. I see Jesus, the first century human man, as somebody who was like tapped in to something transcendent through whom you can experience God, in the same way that I think there are just a tiny group of folks that we would put in such a category, folks like Mother Teresa and Gandhi and Martin Luther King. There are a handful of folks who, and great prophets of other religions, of course, who you could put and you could say, man, they were tapped. It's like they had some intuition. They knew something. They were tapped into something. And they had a prophetic perspective that spoke truth to power, that crumbled conventions that oppressed people and institutions and that oppressed people, to liberate those people, to liberate them unto their full identities and lives. And that is how I see Jesus now. That is the Jesus that I'm now learning about, and feel like I'm getting to know as if for the first time, thanks to people like Josh Scott and John Sheldon Long. And so that's the guy I'm hypothesizing about, let's say now on my new record, and trying to figure out if I could possibly go at him and the way of life that he demonstrated. That's the person who I'm trying to get an objective view of and try to get free of all of the weight and bullshit that I would put on him and all of that. I'm trying to get all that out of the way and just look at it fresh and say, what's here? Is it anything worth believing? Is it anything meaningful? Anything that's life-changing? Anything that's good and healthy and positive for the world in 2021? If so, let's grab that. Let's run with that. And so that's kind of where I'm at. That's where I'm going, with it.
I found a book recently called Resurrecting Jesus by Adyashanti. Do you know that book?
Oh, I don't, but I'll go right.
It's embodying the spirit of a revolutionary mystic. And so it looks at Jesus from a very secular standpoint. Yep. And I love how you just described that. If this guy can be a Christian, then maybe I can too. Because I've been thinking, like, is there room in the world for another Christian-based religion? Because to me, it's that word that's triggering for me, Christianity or Christian or Christ follower. And so I think, because I'm also the mindset, like, I want to reclaim the American flag from the people that are flying it, on January 6th and make it more about what it stands for, which is, equitable equality for all. That's right. I wonder, can we take back the Bible? Can we take back the cross from these people that have misconstrued it to be a weapon? And I don't know the answer to that, but I'm thankful for greater minds than mine to help me navigate those waters, as I can tell you are too.
I think we can, if we wish to. Yeah. I think that in movements like that, you often find things that are worth picking up and running with and repurposing. And there are some things and some terms and some language that actually needs to die in order to move forward.
Isn't that the very concept of Christianity? To die as one, to raise as another.
I think so, and there's actually a song that's going to be on the new record that I think has been a good thesis statement for me, and it's actually a phrase I started using years ago, back when I would have claimed evangelical faith, but it's just as helpful today, and that is that some gods deserve atheists, some do, and sometimes you have to kill a not real God in order to find a real one if there's one to be found. And so I think it's like, again, that's like back to that perennial audit that I think we must be doing with our language and our presumptions about reality, invisible, unknowable things. It's like some gods deserve atheists. And sometimes that's the absolute best thing and only thing that you can do to move forward. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of, so that's where I'm at. And I think that sometimes we have to kill a thing to find a thing or to make space for a thing. Sometimes we want to bring things with us. And I think guys like Spong, folks like Josh Scott here in town, people like you doing this. I mean, I think if it's going to happen, this is how it happens.
Yeah, I agree. I appreciate you recognizing that. You keep talking about this audit, and I think that's the takeaway for me with you is always check the roots. And so if you put that on a t-shirt and put it in your merch shop, I'll be the first to buy it. Okay. Every color.
and I'll cut you into every sale.
Great. Derek, man, DerekWebb.com is where you guys can find him. DerekWebb.com. Derek, you are, and I'm just going to toot your horn for a second because I know you're not going to do it. You are one of these sickest songwriters writing about one of the most complex of scenarios in life. And that is the relationship between the physical and the non-physical. The way, and it's not just lyrically, but even musically. I mean, you jump to chords out of nowhere to represent an emotion or a painful thought that makes, and nothing's indulgent. It's all, and nothing's in vain. And to go, today was so weird to go back to the beginning of your career and just like power through to the present. And it is just, I mean, I think I told you a bit ago, you don't have to research, you just listen to your work and you know who you are, what you're about, and how you see the world. I'm so thankful you made time for this. It truly means the world to me and my listeners I know as well.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's been so great to speak to you. And we'll have to do this again, maybe after the new record comes out and you get a chance to listen to it. Maybe we should discuss that. So let's talk again soon.
Yep. And I'm in Nashville every once in a while as well. So next time I'm there, I'm going to buy you a beer.
Please, let's do that.
Yep.
Oh, that'd be fantastic. Maybe you'll get, you could record we could field record an episode away from.
Oh, yes.
We'll just sit on the table and just drink.
Yes.
Until we run out of tape or whatever.
Yes. Only if you let me sing some harmonies to your songs.
Absolutely, 100%. That's
great.
Absolutely what's going to happen. I love it.
Great. Derek, thank you again. We'll talk soon. And God
Pleasure.
Bless you on this journey, okay?
You as well. Okay. Thanks again.
And all the people said, gay men. Thank you all for listening to another episode of the Fagnostic Podcast hosted by me, Matt Hayes. You can find me at matthayes.com, that's MATHAYES.com, or on Just the Millennial socials at Hayes on It, HAYES on It. Please go subscribe, review, and share this podcast. And in the meantime, peace be with all y'all.
Hi, Michael Spicer here. Matt Hayes forgot to put my name in the credits of his podcast as the composer, but I'm here to tell you that I wrote the music for his podcast. Whatever it's called, I don't know.